Okay, good morning. So we're starting a new Sefer of Devarim, the fifth and final of 5 books of the Torah. Friends, I want to share with you a very important difference between this book, Devarim, the last book of Deuteronomy, and the 4 books that come before it. There is a crucial and very important difference that we see between the first 4 books of the Torah and the level of revelation that went through it, and this 5th book. First of all, we need a little bit of background to go together with this. So first of all, where is this happening? So we know that this is the final statement, speech, words that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to give to the Jewish people right before he dies. These are Moshe Rabbeinu's final words, legacy and testament. So you can imagine it's going to be full of inspiration, warning, fear, concern, and prophecy that's going to relate to the Jewish people who he will not be joining as they enter into and begin their life in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel. So this whole book probably takes a few weeks to a month, and yet it's one long speech that's given over this period of time. It is called in English Deuteronomy, and the word Deuteronomy doesn't mean too much for us, but it does represent something inside this big book, 5th book, because it comes from duet. Duet is a doubling over. A duet is 2. So in Hebrew, it's called Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah means a doubling over. Mishnah is a double over. Like we have a lechem Mishnah, is a double loaf of bread on our Shabbat table. So it is a doubling up. What's being doubled up? Well, a lot of the halachot and mitzvot that were mentioned before are going to be mentioned over here as well. And why are they being re-mentioned? Because they are pertinent for the Jewish people's entry into and life inside Israel. So that is why there is a doubling up. But there are also new halachot, which are also haven't been mentioned before and will be mentioned in this book as well. So what is the difference between the first 4 books? So you'll notice that in this Sefer, we hardly ever see, if see at all, the famous words, Vaydaber Adonai El Moshe Lemor. God spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu saying. Those words pretty much do not appear in the entire Sefer Devarim. Why not? Because the first 4 books of the Torah are HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us the Torah via Moshe Rabbeinu, via him. He has come along, and it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking out, and he's using the garon, the throat of Moshe Rabbeinu, if you will, to speak out the Torah and the mitzvot. That's a very high level of nuvuah, of prophecy. This 5th book is in the first person. It's Moshe Rabbeinu speaking as though he is talking from himself, because it's his own personal words to the people before he dies. But it's also part of the Torah. It's also from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Absolutely, it is from Hashem. But over here, it's a slightly lower level, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking through Moshe Rabbeinu. So the first 4 books, if you will, I see it like this. You have the first 4 books like the first 4 fingers that go this way. They are pointing backwards, and they are by Moshe Rabbeinu. And the last book is through Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's a slightly lower level, say the rabbis, but of course it is all through HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the key over here is this book, as well as being the last will and testament of Moshe Rabbeinu, my friends, it's also everything the Jewish people are going to need to know when they live in Eretz Yisrael. How would you begin your 3-week speech of Moshe Rabbeinu? What would be your opening statement to the Jewish people as they're about to enter into Israel without you? So you know this is your last chance to get through. Well, he starts with some harsh rebuke. He goes through the occasions and the sins that the Jewish people did, which he does not want them to repeat, because many of these sins happened during the 40 years. Some of them began the 40-year journey out of Egypt and are still recognizable, and the effects of which are still being felt. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going to tell the Jewish people, remember what you did, and let's go through what these sins actually are. Number one, they complained in a place called Alush in the Midbar Sin, in the Sin desert, when they ran out of food. That's number one. They left over the man for the next morning. That's number two. They went out on Shabbat, some people, to gather the man, which they were not allowed to do, because a lechem mishnah, a double portion, as we mentioned before, came out on Friday. Three, they complained about not having any water. They complained for not having any meat. And that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent them their slav, the quails. They worshipped Baal Peor when they were in the plains of Moab. They doubted God would save them when they were opposite the Sea of Reeds, when the Mitzrayim were chasing them. They doubted Hashem would save them when they were at the Sea of Reeds, when they came out the other end. They doubted God's ability to overcome the inhabitants of the land of Israel. That's all to do with the Meraglim, the spies, when they were in the Ritma, in the Paran desert, and they complained about the man. They kind of like treated it lightly. They called it Lavan, this white stuff, Hashem, that you sent us. Some of the people joined Korach's rebellion, which took place after they journeyed from Chatzerot to Ritma. And of course they made the golden calf. So there was a whole list of things that they had done. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, remember what you did, you better not do that again when you're in the land of Israel, or any sin like it, like Avodah Zarah, like the golden calf, because it's going to end up really bad for you. So you would have thought he would list off these things just like I did, but he didn't do that. When Moshe Rabbeinu gave over this list of past transgressions, he did it via code words and locations. He did not specify what the sins were. So if you read the parasha, it tells us very little about what those sins were. It tells us locations they were at, and it tells them certain code words. It doesn't tell us what they were. So let's have a look at what he did actually say to them. He said, you were in the desert. Okay? He said, you were in the plains of Moab. He said, you were opposite the Sea of Reeds. He doesn't tell us what we did there. He lets us, the reader, and in that case the listener, try to figure out. He says, you were in Paran. You complained about the white. He doesn't even mention the man. He just says you complained about the white. You in Chatzerot. Doesn't mention Korach. He just says Chatzerot. You worship the golden. He doesn't say the golden calf. He says the Zahav. Why does he do this? Why does Moshe Rabbeinu use code words so that when we reread these words, we have no idea precisely what they did in these locations? And the lesson that the rabbis learn out from this very important idea of Moshe Rabbeinu encoding the sins of the Jewish people via locations and cryptic references is because even when you tell someone off, you don't explicitly relive everything they did wrong, because it's going to make them feel bad and lose hope. You see, had Moshe Rabbeinu stood up on his last days on earth and said, and you sinned with the golden calf, remember? That idol, and you bow down to it. Just people are like, oh my goodness, yeah, we remember that. It's going to make them disheartened. Remember what they did, how they did it, why they did it. Makes it feel terrible. So what does he say? The golden. Remember the golden. That's it. That's how you're meant to rebuke someone. Don't double down and double click on everything they did, every nuance. You kind of like couch it in terms that makes it not so bad and yet reminds them of the mistake that they did. Now he does it in a very clever way. He mentions and says desert. Desert. Why does he say desert? Right? He could have said, oh, remember what you complained in the desert about the food, because desert is a harsh place. So at the same time that he's rebuking them, he's also kind of giving them Schutim. He's given them zchuyot, merits. You know what? You did something wrong. We know what you did, but it was a desert. I get it. It wasn't so easy over there. You were in the plains of Moab, but remember, Moab were very bad people. We know where you worshipped over there. Let's not mention that. You know what it was. But it was the plains of Moab. And who was living there? The Moabites. And the Moabites were very licentiousness people. Right? They were licentious in their actions and behaviors. So he's, at the same time, he's doing three things. He's encoding their sin. He's telling us where it happened. But he's also saying to the Jewish people, but you know what? I kind of get it. It was tough. You're in a desert, which is a very harsh environment. You've left Mitzrayim. You are in Moab, which is a very place full of Moabites who are not very good people. You were opposite the reeds. That's the way he said it. He doesn't say you're opposite the Yam Suf, and what did you do, and you didn't have faith in Hashem. But it's like opposite the reeds. And remember, the Egyptians were following you, and they trapped you, and they kept you contained, and it was difficult for you. So it's so genius the way Moshe Rabbeinu, and this is more Moshe Rabbeinu than any other part of the Torah. He's talking from his heart to the Jewish people. He's couching all of their sins, and he's adding like a little bit of understanding of why they did it. And Paran, of course, is where they receive the reports of the Meraglim. But Paran was also a difficult place to be. It's in the desert. It's understandable. They were very scared of what's going to happen. He doesn't call and say, oh, and you complained about the man. He said the white stuff. Why does he just say you complained about the man? Right? What do they complain about? I know it's hard to believe the Jews complained about the food, but they did it. They complained about the man. What do they say? Oh, the man, it doesn't go through our bodies. It's not a natural food. It's difficult to digest. It's very weird things. It doesn't pass through us like regular food. He doesn't say that. He says the white. Why does he call it the white? Because it didn't look like regular food. So it's understandable. He's like, I kind of get you complaining because usually foods smell good, right? And they look good. And the man didn't look like any other food. It tasted like any food that you wanted. But it didn't have a visual. And part of enjoying food is the visualization, the way it looks, the eye. You want to enjoy the way your food looks as well. You want a nice, it's like big white pile. So even there, Moshe Rabbeinu is like, you made a mistake. You complained. But you know what? I kind of get it. He was giving them a little avenue. He's kind of giving them some agency for which to be upset about. And of course, the golden, he doesn't call it the golden calf, this is the golden. He's like, wow, you know what? There's a lot of gold there. You took it with you, right? You succumbed to a temptation after not having a lot of money for a long time. It kind of makes sense. See, even there, while he's rebuking them, he couched it in terms that made it not so bad. And of course, Chaserot, that's where the whole situation with Korach happened, right? But you were there. Korach was after you. He doesn't mention his name, right? Because people knew that it was very tempting to follow this very charismatic leader. So we learn a very important lesson over here. And that is when we rebuke other people, and even when we rebuke ourselves, there's an element, my friends, that we have to keep in mind that you can be hard on yourself and you can be hard on other people, but don't be too hard. You gotta kind of couch it in terms that people understand what they were doing. I remember I had a friend of mine who was the son of a rabbi, big rabbi. And this particular rabbi did not like his son playing games on Shabbat. Didn't like him playing games on Shabbat, okay? And my friend used to love chess. So one of the uncles came over on Shabbat and he's playing chess. You should know that it's not a halakha not to play chess. You're allowed to play chess on Shabbat. But he told me that his father was very, very upset with him for playing chess on Shabbat. Okay, this isn't for most people, I think, but this is the level that this rabbi was. But he told me, he reprimanded me for playing chess in the following way. He said, you know what? That's not what we do. I know other families do, but it's not for us. And he made him feel very, very guilty. But at the end, before he left the room, he said, by the way, did you win? And my friend said, I actually did win. He said, good on you. You know, you can have a little bit of both. You can give a little bit of rebuke, but at the same time, keep a person's spirit up. Keep them feeling good and let them have their self-esteem at the same time. It's all about the way you do it and how you do it. And even right now, when Moshe Rabbeinu is leaving Olam Hazeh and is rebuking and he's going to tell the Jewish people a lot more things, even now he does it in a way not to let them lose hope about the tremendous opportunities they're about to have and the enemies they're going to have to face and the agricultural challenges, because now they're going to have to sow and seed and reap the crops. There's a lot more that's going to be involved after their miraculous time in the Midbar. So that is what Moshe Rabbeinu is setting them up with at the beginning of Sefer Devarim. Have a good day.